Hello and welcome to my review of the Malcador Infernus for Solar Auxilia for Warhammer the Horus Heresy from Games Workshop. Now, one of these tanks will cost you £65 and consists of 201 plastic components. I'm not sure whether that's more components than the other Lord of War choice for Solar Auxilia, the Solar Auxilia Stormhammer super heavy tank. But a couple of fun facts is that it is a Lord of War choice rather than a heavy support choice, and it's the most expensive plastic kit for Solar Auxilia. Even though it has the same chassis as the Malcador, the standard Malcador tank is £57, and then the Valdor tank destroyer, of which the review will be coming very soon, costs a whole £10 cheaper at £55. And that tank consists of 179 components. Format of this review is as follows. I'll have a look at the tank and the miniature up close. I'll go through all the detail, how easy it was to build, how fun it was to build. Then we'll look at all the spare parts, of which you get a fair few, typical standard parts for a Solar Auxilia tank. We'll go through some size comparisons with, of course, some Solar Auxilia units and some Space Marine tanks. And then at the end, I'll go through all of its rules, found in the Liber Imperium Forces of the Emperor Army book. So first off, this is the first time we've had this particular unit in full plastic form. I did predict that they would, utilise this Malcador chassis and kit and create the Infernus at least. The Valdor, it's never really been on my radar to pick up, but I thought I'd get one just to show you a comparison really. I've always liked this tank. It's a very, very cool tank, or should I say very hot. Seems like a lot of things on the channel are quite hot right now, everything from Fire Dragons to the Nike Air Max 90 volcanoes, and now this tank. But yeah, I guess fire is in this year. But yeah, I really appreciated this tank from afar. I just couldn't stomach spending however much it was, £100 or so on the resin version, considering that Astra Militarum or Imperial Guard aren't really my main force. Now it's come out in plastic and I do have a growing Solar Auxilia army. I thought now would be the time to get one. There's no excuse really. I don't think I get a second one, but there we go. I've equipped it with the Dozer Blade. With their Games Workshop didn't, but then they equipped their Tank Hunter with the Dozer Blade. I think it works well with this Dozer Blade. It's quite a cool piece. I've also equipped mine with flamers. You've got a choice of a number of sponsor weapons here, everything from the flamers to the auto cannons to the multi lasers to the las cannons, and then these flamers. So you can't really get away with looking at this massive flamer at the front. It is an infantry roasting heavy tank. Well, it's Lord of War. It's called an Inferno cannon, and it is very similar to the Inferno cannon that they mount on Warhound Titans. I'll talk about the rules a little bit later, but I thought I'd just add a little bit into the video here that the Inferno cannon for this Malcador Infernus is a Hellstorm weapon. It's a Strength 8 AP4, Ordnance 1, Torrent 9 inches, Breaching 6+, and Concussive 1. The flamer on a Warhound Titan is called an Inferno gun. It's still Hellstorm, but it's a slightly worse strength, in fact. It's only a strength 7 instead of the 8. However, where it does beat the Inferno cannon is the armor penetration. It's actually an armor penetration of 3, and it is a destroyer weapon, and it's a Torrent 24 inches, so it has much further range than the 9 inches that the Inferno cannon has. It's nice that the Inferno cannon has that Breaching 6+, but overall the Inferno gun on the Warhound Titan is a better weapon. If you wanted to know how it fared against the Atron Flamestorm cannon, of which I'll show you a comparison later on, again, it's a slightly worse strength at 7, but it does have the same AP. It has Ordnance 1 and Shred. So it loses out on the torrent completely on the Knight. It can only fire, you know, from its tip, I guess. And it doesn't have that breaching. So what I'm trying to say is it's slightly worse on the Knight than it is on this tank. But the Warhammer Titan has a better flamer. More on the rules later on. And I think that's quite fair. You know, this is a bigger flamer. It has its own massive dedicated fuel supply at the back that's on wheels. The Knight just has to carry the fuel around with it and has to walk around with the main gun. And then the Warhammer Titan can obviously deal with much larger weapon platforms. Speaking of which, this fuel trailer towed behind it, it's in this ball socket joint, which I don't think I've ever seen this before. I would love to see kind of repair vehicles and bridge vehicles for Solar Auxilia or even Deathcore Krieg incorporate this mechanism. I think it's very cool, and you know, just gives more posability to wherever the tank is going. I mean, you know, you can have whole dioramas with it moving down a little hill or moving up a hill. It's just a fantastic idea, and the way it couples, you don't have to glue this peg in, and you can just detach it. So say it gets damaged, or you want this on its side, or I don't know what you want to do with it, but that's very cool that you can remove this freely, even for like transport purposes, and it will only go in one way. So yeah, that's very decent. In terms of how it was to build, I had a lot of fun building it. I think I built it in the live stream. I don't think I finished the gun in the live stream, but very enjoyable. The most fun I've had with the Malcador chassis. Wasn't massively keen on the first Malcador or even the Valdor that I built after this, but this one was a standout model. I enjoyed it. So that's really all the positives and things I've got to say about it. So if you've been on the fence whether or not to pick one up now that it's available in plastic, don't hesitate, just do it, because it's a really fun build and will go extremely well with even your Deathcore Krieg if you wanted to use it for that. Let's get on to the spare parts then. So right here, I think I've got a partial weapons upgrade sprue, which for some reason I've also taken some parts off another sprue, and I've taken all of the weapons off of the kind of weapon sprue, vehicle accessory weapon sprue. Here's one from the Valdor, for instance. So yeah, these are all your spare parts. Look, I've got a hunter killer that's still spare. I've got a flamer, so you can go full 4 flamers with this one and have a pintle mounted flamer, heavy flamer if you wished. You've got a multi laser, you've got a heavy stubber, you've got, you know, some of the crew with all of the extras and things, heads, helmeted heads. Yeah, so the usual stuff. The skis, of course, you don't need to use because it's got that track at the back. So the fuel drums aren't really applicable on this one. You got some extra bits like a little jerry can and some smoke launchers. Don't even think I put any smoke launchers on because where they put those smoke launchers was right here, and I just didn't, yeah, it just didn't sit with me adding something extra there. Looking at their tank though, right here, I think they've added smoke launchers there, and I might do that now I've spotted it. But yeah, they're all the spare parts, not a huge amount. Size comparisons. First size comparison I'd like to make is just with another tank that was released exactly the same time, and that was of course the Valdor Tank Destroyer. It's on exactly the same chassis, so it will be the same length, kind of, I want to say. Well, the chassis is at least, but then you've got these skis at the back that give it a bit more length. Of course, it doesn't have that fuel trailer at the rear. And in terms of main gun, I'd probably say that the Valdor's neutron laser is longer than the Inferno cannon. One thing to note is that the Valdor doesn't have a second sponson. It only has, you know, the sponson on the right hand side. So there is that to note. These are very specific, unique tanks for a specific purpose. One's great at dealing damage to heavily armoured units and tanks. The other is purely anti-infantry. And such a contrast between their battlefield roles. But of course, let's compare the Infernus with an actual Malcador. So would I get another Malcador to keep this one company? Probably. I might equip it with the twin link las cannons though, because I think they do look quite nice. Maybe even equip it with a shorter battle cannon. But yeah, that's where it stands next to the Malcador. I'd say that the OG Malcador is a bit taller. Don't know if you can see that on the camera, but yeah, it is taller. Presence though, it's hard to say. Yeah, with that big Inferno cannon, I'd say that the Infernus does have more of a presence, but at the same time, the Malcador does have the Demolish cannon, and then it has the main cannon there. But certainly the centre line weapons fit the Malcador better than you know, a turret that has a very, very short range of firing arc. Compared to smaller tanks then, such as your Lehman Russ, here's one I made earlier. It's the typical story. The Malcador is bigger. Similar kind of height as well, but the tracks are almost the same. And then we also have the Basilisk, which I'm a big fan of, this kit. So yeah, certainly different battle roles all round there, aren't they? Definitely need to get more of these Lehman Russes. They're very, very cool. As it is a Horus Heresy size comparison, here are two Space Marine tanks. So we have a Land Raider Spartan right here, absolutely huge, way bigger than the Malcador. Is it longer though? It's a very similar length, but there's just more of the Spartan. I mean, obviously it's not as long because of the trailer, but yeah, just look how huge that Spartan is compared to you know, even the Malcador. Very big tank compared to a Sicaran. Yeah, it's a little bit longer than a Sicaran and similar height. Maybe the Sicaran's a little bit taller. So yeah, I hope all those tank size comparisons have helped give you an idea. This is certainly, like I say, well, it's the longest Malcador, but the standard Malcador is just that little bit taller because of that turret on the top. Now then, if you missed my comparison of the Acheron Flamestorm cannon compared to this Inferno cannon, then I've got a treat for you because I can just compare it now. I do have one in plastic, but just for ease, because this is closer, this is the Acheron and its Flamestorm cannon. Hopefully that helps, gives you an idea that it's not the same size. The Acastus Knight Acheron does have a smaller flamer weapon. So yeah, if you were thinking that it has the same size, or they were the same weapon but just mounted on a knight, you've got another thing coming. The Inferno cannon is longer and it's probably double thickness, I'd say. That's the bonus comparison. We're coming up to the end of the size comparisons now. So here is a Sentinel, is it a heavy Sentinel Athean Walker? And then there is one of the Solar Auxilia. So it just gives you an idea of where it sort of stands next to these. Final size comparison I always like to make is just with some Imperial models. So we have a Space Marine, Sly Marbo and a Primaris. So there you go. That's where they measure up. Not sure why you'd be against Primaris. Maybe if it was a traitor Infernus for, you know, traitor guard or something. You know, that's the only kind of way I would think that, you know, you could have this unit on the same battlefield. But yeah, compared to Space Marines, that's where it stands up. I mean, I've got a Mark 6 and 3 Space Marine somewhere here as well, if you wanted to know where they stand up next to it. So yeah. Okay, so this is my part of the review where I will go through all of the rules, and this tank is really pushing the limits of my display turntable right there. Perhaps I need a bigger turntable. You can support the channel in the description below as always, and thank you for everyone that does support the channel. So you'll find the rules for this Malcador Infernus in your Liber Imperium book for Horus Heresy, and as I said right at the start, and as I've mentioned right at the start, you'll find it nestled away in the Lords of War section, right next to the Stormhammer. The Solar Auxilia only have 2 Lords of War choices, but of course, you know, you could give them Titans and Knights and things like that, so they can make it up. But one of these Infernus tanks will cost you 300 points compared to the Stormhammer's 500. The stat line reads, it's movement of 14 inches, ballistic skill 3, front and side armour is both 13, the rear armour is 11, and the hull points is 5. I'm not quite sure why the rear armour is 11. I understand it's got that fuel trailer on the back, but you would think, because it's the same Malcador chassis, it would be at least 12, which is what the Valdor tank has, and the OG Malcador. The war gear is, it has a centerline mounted Inferno cannon and searchlights, 2 sponsor mounted heavy flamers and smoke launchers. Doesn't have any special rules. So what does this centerline mounted Inferno cannon actually do? Well, it is a flamer weapon, and it is a Hellstorm range, so that uses the really big flamer template. It'll automatically hit, of course. Its strength is 8, which is very nice, but its AP, I say, is only 4, so it doesn't, you know, it can't just melt Space Marines, which is a real shame. You know, for a weapon this big, you know, and long, it's kind of as long as the Titan Inferno gun. It would have been very sweet if it was AP3. I don't know whether it used to be AP3. I kind of think it was, but yeah, it's AP4. So if you're against Mechanicum or other Solar Auxilia or other cultists and things, this is the tank to take. But if you're going up against Space Marines, it really isn't worth it. It's an Ordnance 1 weapon, Torrent 9 inches, so that means you can measure 9 inches from the tip and then place that Hellstorm cannon template. It's breaching 6+, and then concussive 1. So it is good at roasting anything other than Space Marines. Now, it does have some options, so it may exchange both of its sponsor mounted heavy flamers for 2 sponsor mounted heavy bolters at 15 points, autocannons for 15, multi-lasers for 15, las cannons for 25. It may take one of the following: a pintle mounted multi-laser for 10 points, heavy stubber for 5, heavy flamer for 5, a flare shield at 25 points, which mine does have, but I'm not sure whether I'd pay the points for it, and then 1 hull mounted hunter killer missile for 10 points and a dozer blade for 5 points. All those weapons do the usual damage and range and things. It really is up to you. I've gone purely aesthetic by equipping it with flamers to go with the Malcador Infernus. It's a bit odd if you're going to take one of these tanks and use up your Lord of War choice and spend 300 points for it, just to then use the Ballistic Skill 3 las cannons on the sponsons. It seems a bit odd doing that. I've gone for the aesthetics, and it's a specific tank for a you know, specific battlefield role, which is to cook lightly armoured troops. The strategy for it is for it to use that movement speed of 14 inches, which is very fast for a tank. You know, it's the same speed as the tank destroyer and the OG Malcador. To get it in range of that 9-inch Hellstorm flamer template and cook as many things as possible. Maybe you can force a number of saves for Space Marines, but against Space Marines I'd be using like the Basilisk to try and cause indirect damage from afar. Maybe Lehman Russes and the Valdor over this one, but I think it's a very cool aesthetic tank. Works well with Deathcore as well, if you wanted to, you know, incorporate it in that army. Any of these Solar Auxilia tanks do, because of their trench skis and overall kind of gritty Horus Heresy look compared to the somewhat rounded, bulky, cartoonish Lehman Rosses. I'm looking at the Rogal Dawn there, for example. What do you guys think of the Malcador Infernus? I think it's a great looking tank. I've always wanted one from when I've seen it in resin, but I couldn't quite pull the trigger. Now that it's come out in plastic and it's available for Solar Auxilia, I just had to and pick it up for this review. Please do put your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. It'd be good to hear from you. Thank you for watching. The Emperor Protects.